What is up, guys? Taiki here, and sorry, I'm a little sick, so sorry if my voice is a little raspy, but I've been doing a lot of self-reflection on my channel lately, and been thinking about what kind of content I want to make in the future. And I think one of the things that I want to focus on is quality over quantity. Like I don't run ads on this channel, right? So like I was in this mindset months ago where I was like, okay, I need to make 2 to 3 videos a week. I need to just keep up with the videos, but that kind of leads to burnout. And also if I'm like kind of in this, I guess like this autopilot phase or autopilot mindset where I'm just just making weekly videos talking about the same thing over and over again, I just wasn't really happy with that. So one of the things I kind of want to start to do is give more, I guess, like a market commentary, because sure, I can talk about farms, but like some farms are bad, some farms are good, and then if the farms are good, then like the farms get diluted and then people get upset at me. It's like, okay, like as my channel grows bigger, I think I have to adapt, right? And adapt my type of content. So if I think about the content that I think can benefit everyone, it's something more along the lines of talking about narratives, right? Because crypto is all about narratives. Most crypto assets, they don't have cash flow. They don't generate anything, so it trades mostly on speculation. Sure, some crypto assets can be in like a value zone, right, where it's like, oh, it's like historically been cheap, so it's probably plus EV to buy here. But in crypto, it's mostly momentum, right? It's like mostly like momentum hype. Sometimes there's value, but in this type of market, I think it's really important to keep up with narratives, because narratives are everything in crypto. And I made this like roughly a week ago, and it's a work in progress. I'm constantly trying to work on it, but I kind of have this narratives page that kind of separate potential or various narratives that have headwinds and tailwinds, right? Heavy tailwinds, light headwinds, heavy headwinds, and then dead/weak narratives. So I'm only going to focus on the heavy tailwinds in this video, and maybe I can expand more on the other stuff later. But for those that don't know, like headwinds and tailwinds, generally, headwinds are negative, right? Imagine you're like running or like riding a bicycle. If there's like wind blowing into your face, then it's going to be hard to move forward. Whereas if there's like wind blowing, like I guess on your tail, right, it's pushing you forward. So generally, when you're writing like potential narratives, you want to focus on tailwinds, or narratives that have good tailwinds, rather than trying to be a hero and buy something with a headwind. So you can kind of see this here, right? Like Phantom solidly, right? Like Phantom, I think as a chain is fine, community strong, but solidly, like that's going to cause headwinds, right? I mean, like, obviously. And I know Atmos had a botched launch. Umi, they launched on a centralized exchange, like instead of osmosis, right? It was like a way for VCs to dump. That's kind of how it felt. And Juno with Prop 16, right? Like taking away whales tokens. No, that's always like a headwind, right? So, and so headwinds here. But the thing is, like with these headwinds and tailwinds, like a tailwind can easily become a headwind in the future, and a headwind can easily become a tailwind if like the product or like the project fixes itself, right? So once maybe the Phantom ecosystem, like Solidex and Solidly, they improve their product, right? And this is easily going to turn into a tailwind. But right now, I still think it's like a headwind. And I think this is like a good way to like get like a quick view of what's driving the markets right now, right? Because what's driving the markets right now, right, is obviously the markets have been pretty bullish recently, right? Bitcoin getting above 45K, and I think it's breaking out. I don't necessarily see all-time highs this year, but 60K, I think it's definitely possible. And in the short term, I lean more bullish. And the reason I lean more bullish is thinking about like what kind of narratives, right, are driving the markets right now. And if you're in the markets right now and you're unaware of what's happening with the Luna Foundation Guard, then you are not doing yourself a favor, right? Like if you're in the crypto markets and you think you're like relatively active, and like you're not aware of, I guess, Terraform Labs just like buying billions of dollars of Bitcoin, then like what are you doing? Because this has been the strongest narrative so far, and this is the narrative that's driving the markets, in my opinion. And right now, you can kind of see how much Bitcoin they hold. I'll put a link to this in the description below. But right now, they've accumulated $1.3 billion with Bitcoin, right? And this is Terraform Labs. Basically, they're trying to partially back UST with Bitcoin, and they're just buying Bitcoin, right? I mean, they're just saying, hey, like we're gonna buy Bitcoin. If you're gonna short the market, then like what are you doing? I'm gonna liquidate your ass, right? That's kind of like that's kind of like the Do Kwon narrative. In late January, they accumulated roughly $300 million worth of Bitcoin or $400 million worth of Bitcoin. And then recently they're just like ramping up their buys. And I kind of want to talk about this narrative, right? Obviously none of this is financial advice. And why this narrative supports my short-term outlook of just leaning bullish. So, this narrative is so strong, right? You essentially have a public figure saying we're going to buy billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin, right? So if you're a market participant, right, and let's say you're bearish, right? Let's say you're a whale and you're bearish. Like, why would you sell now? Like, you would rather much sell higher after Do Kwon and Terraform Labs are about to finish their buys, right? And right now, at the date of recording, I think they have like roughly $900 million left of buy pressure. So maybe, some whales, if they're bearish, they're going to start to offload here. But, whenever, when Terraform Labs announced that they're going to start buying Bitcoin, like that was the time to not be bearish anymore, right? That was the time to at least actually turn at least short-term bullish. Right, because even if you're super bearish with the macro outlook, right, just sell after they finish buying, right? It's not that simple. Or sorry, it's not that complicated. And I argue that the narrative of Terraform Labs and Luna Foundation Guard buying Bitcoin is more important than the amount of buying that's actually happening. Because right now I think they have roughly $2.2 billion that they're gonna buy Bitcoin with, right? They already bought like $1.3 billion. And in the grand scheme of things, like $2.2 billion, like that's not that much money, right? For Bitcoin at least. I mean, it's still a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things, like if people wanted to sell, right, there's gonna be way more than $2 billion with the sell pressure. However, what's important is that the narrative, right? The narrative of them buying is super important, and also, I guess the social media attention that this entire event causes is also an incredibly important narrative that you have to keep in mind. This is gonna capture so much media attention, right? Like CoinDesk, they have 2.7 million followers. I mean, obviously they're gonna have to cover it, and Pentoshi, who is a trader I respect on Twitter. He's also I believe he's midterm bearish. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I believe he's midterm bearish. But even he says yeah, I'm midterm bearish, but short term I'm bullish because they're just buying Bitcoin. And the entire narrative has been Do Kwon has a message for Goblin Town, right? Your days are numbered. If you want to short term markets, go ahead. I'm gonna liquidate your ass, right? I'm gonna buy $125 million worth of Bitcoin every couple of days, and you know what? I'm coming for you. I'm coming for you, right? Right. Luna is coming, and also a bunch of other influencers that cover this too. So I think it's similar to how when Elon and Tesla bought $1 billion worth of Bitcoin, right? $1 billion wasn't too it's not that much money, but the media attention and the narrative that drove Bitcoin to all-time highs, and then the entire Doge and Shiba bubble. And similarly, Luna Foundation Guard buying $2 billion worth of Bitcoin, it's not that much money, but the narrative of them constantly buying in the past couple of weeks is strong enough to essentially get rid of the sellers and only introduce buyers. The sellers will come at some point, I believe. However, in the short term, I don't necessarily think that it makes sense to be bearish. Maybe it makes more sense to be bearish when they're about to finish their buys, right? That's kind of how I think about things. I do have some concerns, right? We are a long way away from $10 billion. Their goal is to raise $10 billion, but right now they only have 2.2 billion, right? And they can't just print money out of nothing. I guess they are printing money out of thin air, but they can't just do this out of their role. There has to be a mechanism in place in order for them to do this, and that mechanism is for the curve pool to be unbalanced. Because if you look at the tweet here, what they're essentially doing is that when the curve pool is imbalanced, as in there's less UST in the curve pool, they mint UST, they dump it in the curve pool, withdraw tether, and then use that tether to buy Bitcoin or something along those lines, right? So obviously it's a convoluted way of saying when demand for UST is high, they're gonna mint UST, right? They're gonna burn Luna, mint UST, and then use that to buy Bitcoin, right? It's pretty simple. And right now, I took the screenshot a week ago, so it could be off, but roughly, it's not imbalanced, right? So when the curve pool is balanced, right? 52.48, it's pretty balanced. They can't mint more UST, right? So who knows? Maybe next week, maybe in the next couple of weeks, maybe billions of demand for UST comes in, and then the curve pool gets imbalanced, and then they're going to raise like $2 billion more, right? And then maybe we can be more bullish, right? But that's kind of how I'm looking at things. I'm tracking the Luna Foundation Guard, like what's their buy pressure, how are they buying, like when are they buying, how often are they buying, can they buy more, stuff like that. And then if they are buying, then like why are you necessarily like that bearish? That doesn't really make sense to me. So I'm not going to fade the short term, I've been. I don't think it makes sense to be that bearish short term. There will be pullbacks, right? Even if you think we're going to go to 60K or something, there's going to be a pullback along the way, right? In September, or was it September? This time, right after June, after July, we rallied and then had like a roughly 25% pullback, right? And before hitting all-time highs. So, even if you are bullish here, I'd expect something like this. Obviously, I have no idea what's going to happen, but something like this, right? Even if you are like super bullish, it can be like this or something, right? I simply don't know, right? I'm not gonna try to sell the top. I'm just gonna take profits over time, right? I'm already positioned. Take profits. Everyone should have a take profit plan. Everyone should have a plan of like how to take profits, whether it be outright selling your tokens or just using your tokens as collateral, borrowing and hedging strategies that way, right? With GOP and whatnot. So I think everyone should have at least a plan in mind. I don't think it makes sense to trade this in short term, but be aware that the LFG they may run out of clips at some point, and then that could be narrative exhaustion, right? So like I said, this is a super strong narrative, right? I believe it's the strongest narrative, but I do have the light headwind here, where if they do finish their buys for the Luna Foundation Guard, then maybe it's time to be more cautious. And also like the ETH 2.0 merge, right? This is allegedly coming in July or August. To be honest, like there's always delays, right? So I won't be surprised if there's like further delays. But ETH 2.0, it's going to be a bullish catalyst, right? Whether people front run it, right, and it becomes all the news, or the markets are bearish and then I guess it pumps in the news. ETH 2.0 is bullish. It's not bullish because it lowers transaction fees, right? The transaction fees are still going to be high, right? It's still going to be high, right? No matter what your favorite influencer might tell you, it's going to be bullish because of the triple halving effect. So you can kind of see this here. I'll provide a link to this in the description, Mr. James Bikini. But at the annual inflation of ETH is going to be cut from roughly 4.3 to 0.43%, right? So it's going to just make ETH super deflationary, given the fact that EIP 1559 is burning ETH. So let's take the 30-day, I guess, average of like how much, what the inflation rate is and like, how much ETH fees they're burning. So, they've been burning this much ETH. But what if the merge happens? Whoops. Oh, it's deflationary. Oh, you kind of have to, predict these narratives before they happen. Because if you were the retail investor that bought ETH in May because of EIP 1559, when that was public knowledge for like many years, then yeah, like you shouldn't really be buying the news. So I'd expect the ETH 2.0 to be a solid news event if it pumps into the event. But it is what it is, right? So if you think about the narratives here, right? ETH 2.0 strong, Bitcoin strong. So I think Bitcoin and ETH are pretty comfy holds, especially the macro situation is pretty uncertain. So like if you want to take on risk, then maybe it makes sense to add risk to like the two blue chips, right? Bitcoin and ETH, because yeah, they'll pump less, but they'll dump less. And lastly, Avalanche Subnets. Obviously, it's coming in a few days, and you can see this here. I said fundamentals, let's go, because in order for you to farm crystal, you kind of have to buy Jewel, right? And obviously the price of Jewel has been reacting positively recently, even despite dumping from all-time highs. And like assuming that subnets work, assuming that the tech actually works, I assume that this would be a bullish event, and maybe it's already being priced in, right? Because you always have to think about like incremental buyers, incremental sellers, right? If everyone that like want to buy Jewel has already bought Jewel, then like who's buying after the launch, stuff like that. So like I said, like I think the markets are still dicey. I think everyone should have an exit plan in mind. I'm not saying exit plan as in like 100% stable coins. I'm never going to be 100% stable coins, right? Like my version of risk off is going to be like just heavy Bitcoin, heavy, maybe heavy cash, maybe some heavy hedging strategies. Because for me, I'm a humble farmer. I don't Like I don't really necessarily have a desire to sell the top or buy bottoms. I just have a desire to slowly make money over time. That's kind of how I view things. And people get hard on for like wanting to call tops and whatnot. But I think the strategy that makes sense is to lean bullish in the short term, and maybe pick out areas of the market that might outperform. But always have a plan, right? Like what if Bitcoin goes to like 52K, right? Like what are you gonna do then? What if Bitcoin dumps to 44K? Like what are you gonna do then? What if we just go sideways? Like what are you gonna do then? I'm prepared for all scenarios, and I really hope everyone's prepared for all scenarios, because no one knows what's gonna happen in the markets. I'm leaning bullish in the short term, but because of like the obvious buy pressure and the narrative in place. But yeah, so let me know what you think about this video. I guess thinking about narratives. If you like it, I'll expand my video next week. I kind of want to do this like every Monday or something, or every Tuesday or whatever. At the beginning of the week, I'll expand on like the headwinds and whatnot, and or just the entire narratives in general. But right now, strong tailwinds for Bitcoin, right? Which is good for the entire markets, right? Because a strong tailwind for Bitcoin is a tailwind for the entire crypto markets. Strong tailwind for ETH, that's going to be around for a couple months. And then in the short term, subnets for Joule. We'll see how it goes, right? We'll see how it goes, right? I have my plans on like take profit strategies and whatnot. But anyways, thank you guys for watching, and have fun farming out there.